Hi, everyone. This is Feig for Resilience Now for Parents. And today I'm in conversation with Dr. Barbara Colombo, who is professor of psychology at Champlain College in Vermont. And I'm really excited to talk to Dr. Colombo because she is a creativity expert. And she's recently done a study that shows that creativity, even during this pandemic, is a powerful tool in boosting resilience, lessening anxiety, and increasing our overall life satisfaction. And so today we're going to talk about how parents can harness creativity in their families to navigate these challenging times. So welcome, Dr. Colombo. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And as you said, I love creativity, and I'm always happy when I have a chance to talk a little bit about it. And yeah, I've been studying creativity from many different perspectives, focusing on children, on adults, and trying to understand what is creativity and what it makes it so fascinating. And it's a topic that's been debated a lot, and I came to the conclusion that many times the most important thing is not the product, but it's actually the process. So whatever happens in our brain when we do something creative, then the results could be a Michelangelo Sistine Chapel, or some interesting drawings that your 2.5 years old can put on the refrigerator. It doesn't matter. It's the process that what benefits us. And it was the most interesting from a psychological perspective. And this idea led me to the research that we were discussing before. So I noticed, and probably if you're on social media, you'll notice that too, that during the pandemics, it looked like there were people of all different ages. They were struggling, and everyone has gone through that to some extent. And then there were some others, they were starting new businesses, having new ideas, becoming professional bakers, and so on. And as a researcher, I wonder what's going on here. And I've been thinking about it. What could make the difference inside the brain? And of course, since I'm partial to creativity, I thought maybe something that relates to that, and I studied it. And I work with different age groups, college students, young families with children, and then older population. And interesting enough, the results was the same in any age group, even if the stress and the anxiety was triggered by different factors. So for example, for parents of young children, what they reported to be triggering anxiety and stress was managing time, having more responsibility, dealing with unusual requests from their work, and constant pressure by the all other family members that they were have to live with. By college students who are more complaining about social isolation and going back to live with their family after experiencing autonomy. So regardless of what people were stressed for, it looked like people that happened to have a higher level of well-being, lower level of anxiety, were people that also score better in some creativity tests. And to be more specific, they were not people that would do a lot of creative things, so not doing tons of activity and force yourself to be creative, but people who were just able to change their perspective and do things in a different way, of looks at things in different ways, and be original. So the originality part of creativity was what made the difference, more than doing 50 creative things and be extremely productive. People who did less but were more original were the ones that were less stressed.
No, that's very interesting. So you're reframing creativity, for me at least, and hopefully for the listeners, because I always thought creativity is the arts, painting, music, singing, creating, writing, creating something new. So that's what you say equate with productivity. But you're really talking about creativity being originality, an original way to shift your perspective, which is a new way for me to think about creativity. And it's
and
encouraging because we're all pressured to be creative all the time.
yeah, and sometimes the pressure is what increases your anxiety, because like you hear someone like me saying, oh, creativity helps reducing your anxiety. And you think, oh, I have to be creative, what I
Right.
can do today. And that doesn't
Exactly.
help, because there are some people who are extremely creative. A friend of mine who was home with his two kids organized an animal-based summer camp for weeks. And every day he had something different. And I was feeling bad up because I could not even start thinking about something like that.
Right.
But and that's great. I mean, I admire him. I did an amazing job, but that's not necessary.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is true. I mean, those activities that you mentioned are very creative. And if you think about it, they force you to do what I said, to be original and change your perspective. But you can do that in a smaller scale by changing everyday things and changing perspective. I had one of my more elderly participants that was actually helping taking care of the grandkids, saying that one thing that they did to try to be more original and change perspective was actually sitting in a different chair every day, which is not
Ah,
something that you can traditionally think about being creative. But it says, I started looking at my house in different ways, and I started having ideas of how I could change things. So changing something small and allowed to start a new train of thoughts, have new ideas, and in that case, being more active and less depressed, which was, it's more a problem of the aging population. So
yeah.
many times starting with something that we have to do anyway and trying to think what can we see differently in this? So what is something different that we can do? Or another activity that families did all together, there was something that would traditionally do, but they did differently.
Uh-huh.
Instead of calling friends or sending text messages or sharing picture on Instagram, they sent cards. They made the cards and sent them. So that was a good way of connecting, doing a usual thing in a different ways.
Uh-huh.
And then there were people who did something extremely creative and had amazing artwork in the cards. And other that just wrote, hi, I wanted to say hi, put it in an envelope and send it out.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But the fact was good anyway. So I think trying to do small things and changing perspective on that and trying to be original, or saying like, oh, we're going to prepare lunch or have a snack. How can we do this? How can this be different than the usual way?
Yeah.
Uh,
No,
and
that's great. What what's your perspective about how be, being creative in this way helps us feel more in control of our behavior, or at least highlights that we can choose to do something differently? And do you think that, contributes to the effect of
Yeah,
lessening
it
anxiety?
helps in two ways. The first way is that many times when we feel anxiety, it's because, as you were implying, we're not in control and we feel there's no way around it. So if we kind of practice like going to the gym, finding a lot of alternative ways of dealing with simple things where nothing happens if we cannot find a way around, helps our brain to see that there are other possibilities, there are ways around obstacles, and that gives hopes and reduce anxiety. And
Mm.
also you become better and more accomplished the more you do it and finding alternative ways of doing things. So if you find a good different ways of folding the laundry and making it a fun activity, then when you're stressed out about something else, your brain automatically will start looking for these alternatives and not start the anxiety trigger, which is interesting.
Ah.
And the other thing is more almost biological. So, and has been proved that people who respond better to any form of damage to the brain and stress to some extent can be seen. I mean, not in an extensive way as a brain injury, but it
Mm.
somehow put some pressure to our brain. who are the people who respond better to that? People who have something that is called cognitive reserve, which is something like muscles in our brain that responds better to change. And a way of increasing this is by actually being flexible in the way we think. And we go back to originality and to changing our perspective. So it's at the same time, we're helping ourselves at a psychological level with anxiety related mechanism, and a biological level by actually changing the wiring in our brain, which is fascinating.
Yeah, interesting. So that goes to the subject of resilience. You know, the old definition of resilience is kind of like this toughening up so that you could be, you know, get stronger. But you're really implying that resilience is creating a situation in your brain where you're flexible and can open up possibilities to navigate through situations, and those systems or pathways get stronger, and that's how we become more resilient.
Exactly. And just to make an example, I recently ran another research on the oldest old. These are people who live above 90 years old. And the interest was seeing what is different in this kind of population. And some people say, oh, you know, yeah, they had a kind of an easier life, and so they were able to maintain. But we interview many of those oldest old, and they had very tough life, like really, really tough lives. But when they talk about it, you can see the resilience that you were mentioning, and the fact that they were able to kind of go on and look at other things and help coping with whatever disasters happen in their life. And I think this is the key for a long and happy life. You know, that if we're extremely stressful, you know, our health is affected as well. Our immune system doesn't work so well. On the other hand, if we reduce that, then we're more healthy, and it's not just less anxiety, but overall physical health improves a lot.
Yeah. And also, the older you get, the greater your ability to have that shift in perspective, or the more experiences you have, the more you're able to see things in a different context, in a different way. And so that's why grandparents are very effective at working with the grandchildren, because they've got that, and they have the freedom to focus on really being present with those kids, whereas parents have all this other stuff going on, and you know, a different sense of responsibility for their kids' well-being. So, you know, kids who have grandparents are really lucky.
I agree. I agree. They can have all this experience, and grandparents, just because of their different life, they can share different perspective and really
Right.
open up uh, different ways of looking at life, which is really nice. And also the fact that they have less responsibility helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so we're not in lockdown now, at least most of us. Um, but there's a lot of kind of like ebbing and flowing of being able to engage in quote normal activities outside the home, or most of us are still pretty much homebound most of the time, and a lot of families are uh, schooling their kids at home, whether it's homeschooling or they're doing remote learning, or a combination of going to school maybe once a week or whatever. And there's still a lot of anxiety, and you know, probably a diminished sense of life satisfaction overall during, you know, this continuing stressful time. So what can parents do? Give some examples of parents or grandparents or other caregivers on a daily basis to just interject that creative perspective into their days to boost life satisfaction and reduce anxiety.
Yeah, something that I found it could be very effective is having like a family meeting that could be parents and children, or with the grandparents as well, if they're involved in the children's life, maybe during the weekend when there's a little more time, and do a little planning for the week. And the planning could be, what would be something that will make us happy, a little thing every day. And then it says, I don't know, and it could be starting by what is different now. So what I'm missing most, and I'm missing going and playing baseball with my friends, because I know some places you're not allowed to do that, some others you are, but it's just like, okay, so Tuesday, let's try to find a way of bringing baseball in our life in a way that we can do it. And it could be done, we can do an art project about baseball. We can create a virtual team with our favorite characters, depending on the age of the children, and think, oh, which role would, thinking about my daughter, Minnie Mouse play? And if you're older,
Uh-huh.
probably someone else. And then it says, oh, something else that I really like doing is something where I can, work with my friends and build things together. Well, maybe Wednesday we can have an hour and do a Zoom and bake cookies together, and things like that. Or like, something uh, other kids were saying, like, I'm happy to be home, but everyone is always running around and I'm left on my own. Okay, so that's something. So how can we find 20 minutes of time when everything stops and we're just together, and where we can put it in our week? And we
Yeah.
having a schedule, which is the opposite of being original, but that helps doing actually the things that we want to do.
Yeah, no, those are beautiful suggestions, and being planful and creating that schedule really is, to me, sounds like you're creating your happiness,
Yeah,
rather than, just letting it come to you, that you're also appreciating what you really love to do, and making sure that happens. And one of my teachers, Tal Ben Shahar, always says that when you appreciate the good appreciates.
that's good. And if you look at the life of the most creative people, they tend to be very organized, and which goes against the stereotypes of the
Right.
creative. But if you look at what they were doing, they were organized, and that actually triggers sometimes having boundaries, or having something that is set triggers being more creative and more original, and because it gives you a stable baseline to start from. So even it might sound counterintuitive that you say,
Yeah.
oh, one has to be original, change perspective, and then you tell us, make a schedule. Well, actually, the two things work together.
Yeah. No, but you're talking about making a creativity schedule.
Exactly.
So there, it's not a regimented schedule.
No,
And if Tuesday comes and you don't feel like playing basketball, or you don't feel like doing the activity that you had put on your schedule,
but
then
that's,
you could be original.
yes, you say, okay, we don't want to do that, or we can't because something's happening. What else can we do that will make us happy? Just trying to find something that will make us happy. And that's usually, and you can always find something that also reduce anxiety, because you see you have some form of control over
Yeah.
happiness, which is always a good thing.
Right. And if you're doing it with your family as a unit, as a group, we know that relationships are healthy relationships are the number one predictor of our overall well-being throughout our lifetimes.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
there's all kinds of benefits to that. So great suggestions, great insights. Anything else you want to offer our listeners today?
I think this is a good starting point. Usually, if you're overwhelmed with information, could be too much.
Yep.
But if there is a possibility of sharing my contact information, if anyone has any questions, or they want specific activities, sometimes it's difficult to give activity that will work for any age group. So
Right.
I'm very happy to follow up with some more specific ideas if anyone needs them.
Wonderful. So when I post this video on Facebook, I will again put your name and your university affiliation, and if people want to contact you, then they are welcome to. It sounds like. So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Wonderful conversation, and be well, and we'll see you again soon.
Great. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.